Hi back, everyone. So let's recap what we learned from yesterday on it was the chapter 4 of psychology, which was about sleep and basically memory. Yes, it was memory and sleep together, right? So quick things that just comes to my mind is that so I'm just writing it down on a piece of paper for myself. So our memory is first things first, a sensory memory that's less than 1 seconds. Then we have a working memory, kind of the same as short-term memory, that's less than 1 minute. And then we have a long-term memory, LTM. And there are a few processes that happen for the long-term memory. For example, encoding, the information processing model, which our memories work like a computer, right? But let's get back to the point where long-term memory is you can divide it into the conscious and unconscious, right? So the unconscious is implicit, unconscious, and explicit, which is conscious. Now the implicit just goes down to the procedural memory, and procedural is for doing tasks, skills, right? It's more like a pragmatic thing. And then the explicit goes down to again two subtypes, which one is episodic, and episodic is for events, experiences, and we have the semantic. So semantic is for facts and like data, right? We also had the top down and bottom up processing. So the as is it like when you say bottom up, immediately the pyramid comes to your mind, right? But let's start from the beginning. So the bottom up versus top down. So for and we also have deduction and conduction. Deduction and induction, right? So the thing about each is so we should imagine a left and right in order to understand it better, right? So one of them is when you're seeing whatever is in front of you, basically the stimulus, and then based on the rules you make a reasoning, right? That's deduction, right? So you deduce from rules. And we have induction where you induce based on whatever is in front of you. So it's based on the event, based on the stimulus, and then you make some perceptions. So if deduction is based on rules, it means that you already have an infrastructure, right? And that infrastructure, that framework of rules is basically what's allowing you to have that. So is it the pyramid or is it the funnel, right? So once So at the end of your conclusion, you want to make the generalization, right? So you go from the specifics to generalizations. The specifics that you see in an event, which is basically induction, right? Induction based on specific event you see, and then you develop, you expand it, so it goes down like a funnel. Once you get to the bottom of the conclusion, you can see everything from the bottom of the funnel. You can see everything above it, right? But deduction is, you have rules and you can never be incorrect. Always within deduction, you're correct, because you start from the bottom and you go to the top, so you can see everything. Now let's see if we were right. Where were we? Apparently this was in chapter 3. So learning and memory were together, and then sleep and cognition and consciousness and language are together. Okay. So for memory, we're talking about the learning part, right? Or is it the cognition? Here. So we have deductive reasoning, from form conclusions from rules, and inductive is from evidence. The good example for inductive reasoning would be Sherlock Holmes, right? Or any CSI series, or these series where the detectives just come to the crime scene and they see a bunch of evidence and they try to form the conclusions, do their reasoning, right? And like deductive reasoning would be something like mathematics, right? You come up with the rules and you can never be wrong in that regard. Now let's dive deeper on the flashcards and we'll be able to see bottom up here. So bottom up processing, we said that it's deduction. It begins with the stimulus, which influences our perception. Not this. The information processing model is driven by bottom up processing, like the computer, right? You have a set of rules. Is stimulus driven. Oh, think about it. It requires an input from the environment. Did we get it the other way? Perhaps. Bottom up reasoning, taking sensory information and then assembling and integrating it. Top down, using models, ideas, and expectations to interpret sensory information. So bottom up is driven by data, whatever you're getting. So wait a second. Let's now go to Let's actually search. Knowledge and behavior. Bottom up. Processing. Okay, there's nothing here. It should be in this one. Bottom up. Top-down processing is the recognition of an object by memories and expectations. Little attention to detail. Bottom-up processing, one will process details first, then the whole object. So bottom-up, you first notice the details, and so I think induction is bottom-up. And then you view the whole object. The recognition of objects by feature detection, not influenced by background knowledge. Okay, now let's go to the Khan Academy link. Okay, let me just view the card here.
Let's look at the difference between top-down and bottom-up processing. So what is bottom-up processing? Bottom-up processing basically begins with the stimulus. So let's imagine that we're looking at something, or let's say I'm looking at a banana. The banana is sitting there and it influences what we perceive. So stimulus influences what we perceive, our perception. So if I know absolutely nothing about something, then the stimulus, or whatever it is that I'm looking at, yet I don't know anything about, I've never seen it, I don't have any preconceived cognitive constructs about what it is I'm looking at, the stimulus basically is influencing my perception. So, for example, let's imagine that I'm looking at a cockpit of a plane. I'm not a pilot. So
it's influencing, it's inducing our perception. So it's the stimulus that's inducing our perception. So it's definitely induction. But how it's bottom up, it's just let's continue, because when it's bottom up, you have to go to the top in order to see everything beneath you, right? Once you get to the top, you can see everything beneath you, and you can see all the things that were correct.
I'm looking at a cockpit of a plane. I'm not a pilot, so I'm not really too familiar with everything, and everything kind of looks fairly confusing. So basically all the different stimuli, so this stimulus, a bunch of gauges and this rudder-looking thing, I'm basically looking at all the different little parts of something that is new and novel to me and trying to kind of comprehend what it is that I'm looking at. So this is bottom-up. This is when you start with no preconceived idea of what it is that you're looking at and allow the stimulus to influence your perception of what it is that you're looking at. So bottom-up processing is data-driven, and your perception of what it is that you're looking at directs your cognitive awareness of the object. So in contrast, top-down process.
That's why kind of when you're in a corporate ladder, once you're at the bottom of the pyramid, you can't see anything, and everything is data-driven. So you have to bring results. And I'm just trying to make these analogies for us to understand it.
Basically uses your background knowledge. So it uses your background knowledge to influence perception.
That's deduction, right?
So let's look at this example over here. So what we're actually seeing are a bunch of circles. They're just a bunch of circles, and then inside the circle there are a couple of lines drawn. So we're looking at this set of circles, these white circles with lines drawn inside of them. We're creating this cube. We're basically taking these lines and then putting them together in order to create a cube. Even though the stimulus itself, which is the circles with the lines, actually doesn't draw a cube because there are these black spaces over here and there's absolutely nothing in the black spaces. But our brains are basically taking this information and using our knowledge of cubes and what they're supposed to look like, we're recreating a cube despite a lack of a cube actually being present in the image. So that's top-down processing, is using your background information, your background knowledge, your learning, your expectations in order to influence what it is that we're perceiving. So in other words, it's theory-driven. We look at this and we assume that they're trying to represent a cube, even though one's not actually drawn there.
Like if you had not seen a cube, like if you were literally a 1-year-old kid, you would not see the cube because you did not have any background knowledge of it. But because you have the background knowledge of the cube, you have seen so many cubes in your life, now you just make a cube out of it while there's nothing inside between the circles.
And we're using that theory in order to shape our cognitive understanding of what it is that we're looking at. So our perception, our behavior is influenced by our expectations, which is top-down processing. So we're using what's already in our heads in order to perceive what it is that we're looking at. Whereas in bottom-up processing, we're using the stimulus itself in order to drive our perception. So another good example of top-down processing would be Where's Waldo? So in Where's Waldo, we have a mental idea of what we're trying to do, which is to find Waldo amidst this really jumbled mess of a picture. So if we were using bottom-up processing in order to look at this, we would just be seeing a whole bunch of little people and we wouldn't really be goal-driven. We wouldn't be trying to do anything. But with top-down processing, we have a goal and we're able to look through here to find Waldo.
And based on this, we can know now, like this instructor is not saying which one is induction and which one is deduction. We know that induction starts with the Where's Waldo is a poor example describing this concept. Yeah, because like
we have a goal and we're able to look through here to find Waldo.
Like he's trying to say that that's bottom up because
goal driven. We wouldn't be trying to. So if we were using bottom up processing in order to look at this, we would just be seeing a whole bunch of little people and we wouldn't really be goal driven. We wouldn't be trying to do anything. But with top down processing, we have a goal and we're able to look through here to find Waldo. Okay, let's look at the difference. We have a goal.
So he's saying with bottom up, you're just saying it, looking at these people, but with background knowledge, with top down, you have a goal and you find Waldo. But back to my point, induction. Now we know induction is going based on the stimulus. It's like the Sherlock Holmes thing, right? So you have no knowledge. It's like the cockpit you see as a pilot. I mean, not as a pilot, as a non-pilot. And that's when you are inducing something. So the stimulus induces your perception. And by this, we now know that bottom up is the same as induction. So remember that between bottom up and top down, just draw the pyramid or the funnel for top down, and then you would be able to decide which one, like when you know you're going from the bottom to the up, the end goal is to have a view of everything, right? With top down, once you go down, you have a view of everything, because you can easily mix mix up the top down with the pyramid too. Now let's So here I asked ChatGPT, what's the difference between induction and deduction? Induction involves drawing general conclusions from specific observations. That's bottom up, right? While deduction starts with general. So remember, whatever you start with is the flat, the wider thing, because you have to either go to the top or to the bottom, right? bottom up or top down, and you have to either go down or up in order to see the whole thing, right? In order to make the conclusion. Uh, so deduction starts with general premises to reach a specific conclusion. Induction is based on probability, while deduction aims for certainty through logical reasoning. And how is it related to top down and bottom up processing? Deduction is akin to top down. You see? So we got it in the first place, we got it reverse. So now on the let's start with bottom up again, right? So for bottom up, the very first thing that you say, bottom, refers to the bigger, so that determines that the bottom is bigger. It's less known. You have less known at the bottom, right? So therefore, it's a pyramid, right? Even here, ChatGPT says it, right? Induction is a bottom-up approach, beginning with specifics and building towards generalizations. Picture deduction as a funnel and induction as a pyramid. There you go. So pyramid is for bottom up because whatever you start with is the wider section, and you go up so you see everything beneath you, right, below you. And that's what does that give you? It means that you had unknowns from the beginning, from the bottom. You don't know anything, so it's induction. You need to know that induction is inducing the stimulus. Induction. And vice versa, top down, you start from the top, so it goes like a funnel, and there you have deduction. The thing is, with deduction, you do have a set of knowledge rules, and you're always correct, right? Deduction is like recognizing a specific bird as a robin based on general bird characteristics. So you say a robin is a bird because you have some knowledge of the bird. But once you see all robins, like multiple robins, and conclude that they all have certain features, and you say they're all robins, they're like each other, because you went based on the stimulus, whatever was in front of you. Okay. Ask me. But just something that might confuse you is drawing the funnel and saying that it's top down, since you have to go down in order to see everything, make conclusions. The point is, like, once you go up or down, you're able to make the conclusion, right? The point of reasoning is to make a conclusion, right? And conclusions, logic basically, starts with either a set of rules like deduction, right? And it's always correct. Or it starts with bottom up, where it's induction and it's based on the stimulus, right? So what's data driven? It would be so bottom up is data driven, since you're saying everything in front of you, right? But top down is So yeah, for all of you who had a problem understanding this, also divide this video into some. Bottom up processing is when the environment stimulate influence our thinking. Top down processing is when our thinking influences how we see, understand, perceive the environment. Pop the goal of the cockpit is to fly the plane. But despite knowing that purpose, I still have no idea what am I looking at. Everything is new and novel, even if I am aware of the goal. In the case of Where's Waldo, though, I know the goal is to find Waldo, but that knowledge doesn't actually help me find him faster. I still need to go through the page piece by piece, which seems to imply that it is bottom-up processing in order to find him. It seems like a top-down processing strategy for Where's Waldo would be using some prior knowledge or experience where Waldo is typically hidden to find him, or otherwise using some kind of strategy to locate him. In other news, I had absolutely no idea that there were strategies for finding Waldo until I googled it just now. I can't decide if it is brilliant or cheating. That's a very good question. To be honest, I try not to see top-down processing as merely goal-driven, but rather it is a type of processing that relies on prior knowledge and experience. Top-down and bottom-up processing are processes that usually work together, so it's not normally this or that happening at one time. You may be using top-down processing as you perceive an object whose form you're familiar with, like the cockpit, but at the same time also be using bottom-up processing to make sense of unfamiliar things pertaining to the object, like trying to determine what some buttons on the cockpit do based on their observed properties or positions or whatever. A better example of top down would be that you know someone who is usually very mean and they make a joke because you know how they are. You will assume that they said the joke to be mean rather than funny. This is the best example I can find that uses prior knowledge, in this case the prior knowledge of the mean person when processing information. See, don't worry, everyone's getting confused thanks to these great instructors. I'm kidding. So if you had knowledge of my joke and how much of a mean or funny person I am, then it would be easier for you to make conclusions about me to see if I'm a asshole or if I'm the best stand-up comedian in the world. Cool. So where were we? Yeah, we try to just see what's memory, but something and like we went a bit into bottom up, top down processing. If needed, we can. That's a problem. Like you have to dedicate a half an hour to understand a single concept on the MCAT, and there's so many of them. So and like tomorrow you have to again recall these. Shout out to our memory chapter. You have to recall everything uh, oh you studied about, something about recalling. So we know that semantic meaning is the most powerful compared to audio or visual encoding, acoustic or visual encoding. Then certain triggers will activate associated memories. Then we have retrieval. Recognition of info is stronger than recall. So that's interesting. Something that we need to tell ourselves constantly, that the recognition of information is stronger than recall. Cool. And we had Korsakoff syndrome, which is memory loss due to thiamine deficiency, that's vitamin B12, and Alzheimer's is based on acetylcholine. Cool. Let's now continue with chapter 5, which is about motivation, emotion, and stress. So, what's motivation? I know that we have external and internal motivation, and motivation is the purpose or driving force behind our actions, and they can be extrinsic or intrinsic, as I just said it. So, whatever intention you have behind your actions, that's your motivation. Then we have instincts. They are innate, fixed patterns of behavior in response to stimuli. They are fixed patterns of behavior. It's safe to say that AIs have instincts because they have a fixed pattern of behavior in response to each stimuli. Then we have instinct theory. People perform certain behaviors because of their evolutionarily programmed instincts. So the theory says that everyone, like all humans, performs certain behaviors, fixed patterns of behavior, because of their evolutionarily programmed instincts. So you have these evolutionarily programmed instincts. Then we have arousal, which is the state of being awake and reactive to stimuli. It's not the sexual arousal. It can be very related since you're awake and you're responsive to stimuli. Then we have optimal arousal theory. It's the optimal performance that requires optimal arousal. Arousal levels that are too high or too low will impede performance. We need to gather all the theories together, in my opinion. We'll do that as a second layer of everything. Then we have, so these arousals that are too high or too low will impede performance. Drives are internal states of tension that beget particular behaviors focused on goals. Primary drives are related to biological processes, and secondary drives stem from learning. So we have secondary drives, learning, primary drives, biological, and they are internal states of tension that beget particular behaviors focused on goals. And they are tension. Drive is a tension. It's a pull, internal pull, and it requires certain behavior from you to get to the goal. This is very interesting, even in the sense that we all have goals. Why are you studying for this exam? That's your internal drive. And we have drive reduction theory, which is a motivation that arises from the desire to eliminate drives, which create uncomfortable internal states. So you want to reduce your drive. Motivation arises from the desire to eliminate drives. So you want to eliminate your drives. You don't want to worry about your financial problems anymore. So motivation arises from that, which creates uncomfortable internal states. That's very interesting. Since when you knew that you reduce your drives, your internal tensions, in order, and that's where your motivation arises from. So your motivation arises in order to reduce your drive, and that creates an uncomfortable internal state for you. It's very interesting. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. These are physiological, and then safety. Physiological is like not being hungry and not dying within the next hour. Then after physiological, we have safety, and then security with safety, same thing. We have love and belonging. That's the third level. That's the middle. You need love and belonging to a community. A book that a video actually I read by Steven Pressfield, the author of War of Art, was that actually in the West, this belonging is vanished. And if you look at the tribemen in, for example, Afghanistan or Arab countries, you do see them having a sense of belonging to the community. In the East, you generally see it. In Eastern Europe, you see that. You see that each member of the society or community has a sense of belonging, but that has been removed from the West and it has been replaced by success. So that's very interesting. And there is also self esteem, which is the fourth level. It's basically like self confidence, and at the highest level, you have self actualization. And can you relate? Can you say that self actualization is the same as success? Who knows? We should maybe ask Maslow. Higher needs only produce drives once lower needs are met. So your physiological, your safety, your love and belonging, your self uh, esteem and self actualization will be met in that order only. Self actualization, full realization of one's talents and potential. This is your talents and potential. Self determination theory. We also had determination and differentiation in the cellular biology, and that's for the stem cells. And it's actually an important concept. So we definitely need to make sure that we have that in our under our belt. Self-determination theory emphasizes three universal needs: autonomy, competence, and uh, relatedness. So self-determination emphasizes three universal needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. You want to have a sense of autonomy, being able to determine your future. You want to be able to compete. You have competence, skill sets, and you want to feel related. Then we have incentive theory, which explains motivation as the desire to pursue rewards and avoid punishments. So incentive, it explains motivation as desire to pursue rewards and avoid punishments. It's both pursuing rewards and avoiding punishments. That's incentive theory. Expectancy value theory. The amount of motivation for a task is based on the expectation of success. So you expect success and the value of that success. Value of that success. Expectation of that success. It's all related to motivation. So we need to know these motivation theories. We had instinct theory, where let's just finish the theories and we'll come back to all these theories. Opponent process theory explains motivation for drug use. As drug use increases, the body counteracts its effects. So you increase drug use, leading to tolerance and uncomfortable withdrawal symptoms. So, opponent process theory. That's why you don't want to be addicted to cigarettes, marijuana, alcohol. Trust me, this is science, not those. Ha, I'm getting you, eh? But we also had hallucinogens here as LSD, peyote, mescaline, and ketamine. These are consciousness altering drugs. You can easily be addicted to alcohol, barbiturates, benzodiazepines, and we have the house money effect. This is tricky. Is it related to house and money? Is it related to casinos? After a prior gain, people become more open to assuming risk since the new money is not treated as one's own. So, prior gain, more open to risk. Why? Because the new money is not your own. Gambler's fallacy. Is this related to casinos? The gambler's fallacy. If something happens more frequently than normal, it will happen less frequently in the future, or vice versa. That's Russian roulette in daredevil embodiment, in sheep's clothing, right? That's the gambler's fallacy. So if something happens more frequently than normal, it will happen less frequently in the future. And with those streaks, that's how the casino makes so much money. Not to confuse it with house money effect, where you make a gain and you're more open to make the risk a gain. Prisoner's dilemma. That's a famous one for. That's when the both prisoners don't see each other. Two people act out of their own self-interest, but if they had cooperated, the result would have been even better. So if you cooperate, your your result is even better. Nice. So these are all based on motivation. So we can actually number them. So let's say motivation is the purpose, right? What drives us, driving force behind our actions. Then we have instincts, innate fixed patterns of behavior in response to stimuli. Let's look at your motivations as a means of praying. What you are motivated by is you're praying for God and worshiping Him, the fact that you are alive. So instinct theory, that's number one. What does it say? Does it mean that you make decisions based on your instinct? It's evolutionary program instincts that we have certain behaviors for. Then we have arousal. It's the state of being awake and reactive to stimuli. Optimal arousal theory. That's the second theory. So you perform optimally when you're optimally aroused. What's the third? Then we have drives. These are tensions inside us. We have primary drives and secondary. Secondaries are learned, primary ones are biological. The drive reduction theory is the third theory that we learn. You want to reduce this internal state inside you, and you want to get to your goal in order to reduce the drive. However, you face some uncomfortable internal states. Then we have self-actualization is related to it's like full realization of your talents and potential. Then we have self-determination. Wait, that was 4. This is the fourth theory, the self-determination theory. Then we have, so self-determination is that you feel so you have 3 universal needs. You want to feel related to your tribe. You want to provide value, like be competent and be autonomous. Then the incentive theory is basically based on the incentives that you have, right? So you do work, it explains your motivation is a means to get rewards or avoid punishments. And expectancy value theory is the 6th theory, which is about the amount of motivation for a task being related to the expectation of the success that you want to get, and also the value of success. I'm using triggering, by the way. That's a memory thing that we had to know for the memory chapters. I just take a look at, it's kind of cheating. I just take a look at the words and I try to come up with the rest. But it's not a good cheating. You want to make sure that you understand each and every one of these concepts. So that's why we repeat them again and again and again. We have opponent process theory. So that's the explanation for drugs. So that explains the motivation for drugs. It has a tolerance effect, and it produces uncomfortable withdrawal symptoms. And the house money effect is different than gamblers. More house money sounds like gamblers. Hey Siri, stop the alarm. So the house money effect is actually when you make a prior gain, and then based on the prior gain, you are more open to risk. But gambler's fallacy is thinking that because something happened more frequently means that it will happen less frequently. It's tricky. Like, I wanted to say that if the sun is appearing every day, it doesn't mean that it will not appear. It will appear always tomorrow. Well, it's kind of the opposite here. So because the sun is appearing more every day, because on the Russian roulette you get red every single, like for 5 times in a row, the 6th time the probability goes lower, but it's like in reality it's 50-50. And we have prisoner's dilemma, and prisoner's dilemma is that's why gambling is such an addiction, right? And you can consider prisoner's dilemma as the 10th one, since it's when 2 people act out of their own interest. And let's say this is the bonus, whatever, doesn't matter. Anyway, I'll come back to the emotion theories, but let me just go grab something quickly to eat, and I'll be right back.